You have a Donegal team that put up a big scoreline against Down, that narrowly saw off Derry, up against the Tyrone team that, after conceding 6 goals to Kerry, had a pretty good performance against Cavan, 118 to 13 points. But these two counties do not like each other.
God, there's so much spite in this rivalry. It's unreal, like, because I'm willing to say this. Colin Ethan back me up on it. Like, coming from Fermanagh, there would have been a number of times that you watch your own county against Tyrone, and when they have the game done and dusted 10 minutes into the second half, like, the supporters have a habit of cheering every pass, like, and saying fairly salty things, like, to anybody, and they don't care. That's all part of the makeup, like, and that kind of rubs counties up the wrong way. And Donegal, I think, I mean, you go back to 1972 was the first time that Donegal won the Ulster title. I was actually watching some of the footage in RTE there. It's sensational stuff, like, and so Donegal won that title. Brian McAniff was the player manager. Following year, they go up to Ballybofey, and Tyrone leather into them. Neely Gallagher, who played for Guido, he had to be brought to Letterkenny General Hospital for emergency surgery. He nearly lost his eye from a belt from a fella not too far from Conleith, actually. And then, like, since that, even Jim McGuinness's book there, I was looking back over it this morning, he was saying that he was playing an under-21 match, a challenge match against Tyrone in Castlederg, and throughout the game they'd be pawing at you, talking to you, and at one stage he went in, and the fullback, he cleaned him out, but then he put his studs into his face and just put the ball of his foot and just wriggled it round just to really hurt him, and he looked at the referee done nothing, the fullback just laughed. So with all that kind of hurt, then when McGuinness became manager, could do something about it, he absolutely leathered it into these Donegal players that they would not be made shows of, they would not get this kind of behaviour, they would not accept it. I mean, even in that first year in 2011, somebody's documented it in a book, and he was saying that they came with a strategy that the moment then that Donegal started getting on top, that the Tyrone boys would start mouthing and getting in their faces, and they had a saying, "Not today." So that was their way of distancing themselves from the emotion to the actual playing. So if somebody slabbered at you, somebody told you, or you just said, "Not today," not engaging, not going down your level, and Donegal beat them. Following year, Donegal beat them again, but Martin Penrose had a shot that Paul Durkin pushed onto the post with his toe. Year after that in the league, Niall Morgan hit 3 frees, long range. It was his first year in the league. Saved a penalty from Michael Murphy. Carl Lacey was spot on going down the tunnel. Then they went up to Ballybofey later on, a couple of months later, and it was real welcome to hell stuff, like, and Morgan, when he went to take his first free, he found Rory Kavanagh, Michael Murphy, Neil Gallagher, maybe one or two others standing in front of him, all with their arms in there. You could, like, if you think about the perspective there, and there's so many of those frees that Donegal players couldn't have been more than 8 yards in front of Niall Morgan. Niall Morgan simply couldn't have seen the posts. There was no way he could have actually lined up the kicks. And of course, like, those Donegal players were in his face. And this is what, after that humiliation, if you want to call it that Tyrone got at the hands of Dublin in 2011, all of a sudden you're in the McGinley's, Brian Dooher, all those players had retired. The real hard chores, like, and you were left with Conor Gormley, normally, kind of fighting a losing battle by himself and maybe with Joe McMahon. But the players that were left were all too nice. If that had happened in Tyrone in 03, 05, 08, they would have been straight into those boys every single time. They would have been straight onto the referee. They kind of let it happen to themselves. Morgan missed a series of frees that day, and Donegal squeezed home. And ever since that, it has been, even during that, and they played at 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 9 times. Tyrone only won 3 of them. They won the Ulster final in 16, the semi-final in 17, and they won the Super 8s game by Ballybofey in 18. 19, Donegal won by 4 points. It could have been 10 points. Tyrone were a total mess then, and Donegal just won pure mental resilience last year. And they thrown under new management. they're under boys or no shrinking violets, they will be sick at what happened to them. They have to be absolutely appalled with what happened to them in Killarney. And I think that there's going to be an awful lot of fire. There has to be an awful lot of fire in Brewster Park.
And Conleth, like, what was your thoughts of playing against some of those Tyrone teams and even those Donegal teams, and your thoughts on the spite between them? And if Tyrone, like, are Tyrone a soft touch now compared to before? They're not a soft touch, but like comparatively.
Well, in my time, it was, whenever you had, you Mark and Racy, Philly Jordan, Conor Gormley, they were proper hard players. Like, there was no Given and Donegal, Ennett Deal McGee and Eamon, and you heard plenty of stuff, and there was a stage we played Donegal and Ballybuffet, and there's times I sort of wondered, was it actually true? They said it with such confidence. I'm wondering, was some of the stuff true? But no, proper hard footballers. And again, I think both sides are probably that wee bit softer than back in those days. But the one thing, Declan talked about all those victories. Any time that Donegal got those victories, they all had one thing in common: Michael Murphy. When Tyrone beat them, what happened? Michael Murphy got took out of the game. Be it Joe McMahon, Justy McMahon had running battles with him for a number of years, and there was always an outcry after.
I'm going to jump in, but because I remember this well, like in 2016, when they were in the Ulster final, it's one of them ones that Mickey Hart really did. You got to give him credit sometimes, like because he sometimes does completely the unexpected thing. And I'll just take you back to 2012. They played Kerry in the back door, and he started Ronan McNamee for his debut, and he made him mark Paul Galvin. Now, that did not end up well. But in 2016, if you looked at that defence, previously he had Conor Clark, had marked Michael Murphy in 2012 and did very well indeed on that day. Justin McMahon, Joe McMahon, you've Conor Gormley. Instead that day, he put Cal McKeown on him, and I think Cal McKeown scored a point. So he outscored Murphy from play in that game. So he definitely played that whole game. 2017, and you can take it from there anyway, Conley.
Yeah, but look, all these games always hinges on Murphy, and like there probably hasn't been a more influential player, in the last 20 years maybe than Murphy. He does everything. He scores, he nails his frees. But in terms of the hard stuff, he puts in the big hits. Whenever the game's going away, he finds a way of putting pressure on the referee and suddenly getting wee inches. And if you look at the game last week, when Murphy came on, I think I seen a stat that Donegal outscored Derry 8 points to 4 from Murphy came on.
Yeah.
So that's where he is. Tyrone, I was with Aidan Dark, a couple of McGuffins from Aidan Dark over the weekend, and the debate started about McCurry, and they just rate him so highly, 12, 13 points week in and week out. And then some of the other boys were saying, but look, until he puts this big performance in against Donegal, Kerry in the championship, because they were comparing him in the same vein of form as Clifford and Conor O'Callaghan at the moment, and that's where he's at. If he can pull one of those performances out again, the difference with McCurry probably this year is that in the Hart era, they probably didn't have huge faith in him. He didn't get playing through the phases when it wasn't going well. So the minute he missed a free, or he maybe was taken off them, or was taken off, at the minute he's not going to be taken off. He's the main man. The interesting bit will be, he has been the leading light. If Tyrone come through and play McShane, and McShane plays at 14, does that minimise the effectiveness of McCurry? So I'm wondering, will they try and hold McShane back, because McCurry has been shooting the lights out? But the thing is, McCurry, McBrearty, who wins that battle? And whoever wins that battle goes a long way. If Murphy's still not 100% fit, which he can't be because he would have started against Derry had he been fit, will they bring him on as an impact man again? McBrearty's revelled in that, because if you think back to the Down game, McBrearty was really struggling to get into it. As soon as Murphy went off, McBrearty got playing from the 14 on the edge of the square. They started kicking ball in as opposed to hand ball off, and McBrearty shot the lights out. So there's all them wee things at play. But this is massive for Tyrone. There was a clamour for change. They've got the change they want, that the vast majority of people and supporters wanted, but it has to deliver.
Join the Our Game Supporters Club at Patreon for €5 per month to get audio podcasts of the Hurling and Football Show and much more exclusive material.